Okay, cool. Awesome.
Excellent. Okay, it's a 1 minute after 5, and I am a punctual person. So welcome everyone. I know there'll be people joining us. It's a busy time of year. As parents especially, we totally get it. So thank you for sharing your evening with us. My name is Shelly Howard. I'm the founder and CEO of College Ready and See Our Future Now. And tonight I have the honor of sharing Joe, and he pronounced it for me. Say it one more time, Joe.
Sebestyen.
Yeah, I try to make him all Italian and
That's
everything, and he's like, no, don't do that. He is going to share some incredible information about APs. I think this is so valuable. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, Joe. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Shelly. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone.
Excellent. So Joe is going to share some great stuff. I'm going to open up the evening and share about testing in general. And I didn't put together a zillion slides for you. I'm going to genuinely just share what everybody's asking, and that is testing optional? Why not start with the question and give you the straight answer? This is how you want to think about testing. If your student is not a good test taker after test prepping, it may not be wise to go to test required schools. Okay, think about that for a moment. Play to their strengths. If your student is an amazing test taker, it will hugely help them as they approach college applications. So College Ready was started 17 years ago, and it all started with my firstborn, who happened to be a really good test taker. And why is that important? Because in this world, is it test optional? I'm going to share just briefly all of the reasons why testing is so critical, and test prep even more so. Joe's going to speak to the APs, of the benefits, what you're going to get out of them. So when you leave tonight, you're going to have absolute certainty what is a good strategy. You may not know all the details on how to get there, but you'll at least know what you don't know. So I'm going to jump in on that. So that firstborn of mine, back in 2008, 17 years ago, he was one of those students, and you may have them, that was just naturally a good test taker. But he hated to test prep. He did not at all enjoy that part. But he had a really good GPA. And so when we were preparing him to apply for college early on in his freshman year, I said, listen, if you have a really solid GPA and your test scores are at basement, they're going to think what? That either your school gives easy A's, or there's great inflation, or that, maybe you're just one of those students that is not balanced with testing and actually classwork. But think about it this way. What if you have a super, super high test score, kind of average GPA? That can absolutely help your whole application. So if you don't test, that's the first thing you're going to be missing. The second thing is, my firstborn proved this theory well. He said, Mom, I have a good GPA. I know this subject matter. I'm just going to pick up one of those books and I'm going to self-study. And I said, oh, all right, that will save me some money. Outstanding. I love the idea. Let's do it. But I'm concerned that's probably not a good strategy. He's, Mom, I got this. Okay, fine. So he would go and say, I'm going to go study, prep. And I go in his room and he'd be asleep on the book. And I would tease him. That is not going to be helpful. It's not going to just absorb into your brain. And he didn't find that funny at all. But what he did realize is he took the SAT, and when he got his score back, he was devastated. A student with a 4.6 GPA is now thinking, I'm stupid, I'm not going to college, and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself because I'm obviously not good. The problem is he didn't test prep. He may have been in front of a book, but that is not test prepping. So then he did it my way. We hired him a test strategist who gave him a diagnostic SAT and ACT, and then analyzed the score. And then we showed him the test score he needed to receive to get into his dream school. And all of a sudden he had this huge motivating factor of, if I really want to go to my dream school, I got to up my test prep game. So he went all in on the test prep and worked with the strategist, did what the strategist recommended, and he increased his SAT by 300 points. That's massive. That was the difference between a state school and a top tier Ivy school. So when I say that testing is important, it is really important that you test prep and really spend time working through that. And Joe will explain on the AP side. So once you go forward with that, you're thinking, okay, well, it's a lot of time and a lot of money. My kid doesn't have time and I don't have money. Let me explain why it's important. That same student of mine, that same child, he received 7 top tier full ride offers because of his whole standout strategy, not just his test score, but that was one of the 7 factors that he brought. So it equaled dollars. So that money I invested in test prep, test strategy, tenfolded into a free education at Harvard. And you may be thinking they don't give free educations at Harvard. And I'm telling you that when he got a free presidential scholarship at USC and Harvard matched that with their huge endowment, there is opportunity for free at Harvard. So I want people to understand it's like anything else. If you have a small resume, you have small opportunities. If you have a nice resume, thought out, strategized, you have big opportunities. And that is what I'm talking about tonight. And that's what Joe's going to get into. We're talking about opportunities to stand out, to be different from the rest. So when we talk about testing, the third thing I want to share is my son, again, went into, he said, I want to be a doctor. I'm going to take the MCAT and I'm going to prep on my own. And this time I'm like, did you not learn your lesson? He's like, Mom, no, this time I'm going to use what my test strategist taught me and I'm going to prep. And I'm like, that makes sense. Bought the books, self-studied, and he got a 98 on his MCAT. Why? Because he learned how to beat a standardized test. Not that he was brilliant, not that he was perfect. He knew how to beat the test. That is what I'm trying to explain. It's not a short-term, take it and be done with it. They'll use test strategy and the skills that Joe's going to teach all the way through college. So it's not just a now investment. It's a now and you'll get a return on your investment time and time and time again. So I reached out to Joe and I said, listen, you don't know who I am, but I think what you're offering is amazing. And I wish my kids would have had someone like you. So my second born, she decided she wanted to be a nurse. And so she had to take the NCLEX. So again, how optional is testing? Not if they want to be a CPA, not if they want to be a lawyer. I mean, time and time again, they're going to have to take a test to see if they're qualified for what they want to do. It just happens to be that once you learn how to beat a standardized test, you will always know how to beat a standardized test. This year, our test strategist for the ACT got a freshman student of mine a perfect 36 first try. Freshman, female, first try, 36. Okay. Everybody's like, when do you start? You start when your student has taken the required knowledge. You don't want to wait for that student because they'll forget Algebra 1 by the time they're in Calc AP or BC. So super important that you realize it's more about your student than it is about the win. Now, we have some timelines I'm going to share with you. I have tons of free resources I want to give you, but I want you to first think about your unique children. I have 4. My first was an amazing test taker. Day 1, we knew it. My second had massive test anxiety. It was real. At the beginning, I didn't believe it. I know, bad parent on me. But I would see her study like way harder than her brother, and she would take the test and bomb it and be shocked. Like, I don't know what happened. And I'd be like, really? I mean, maybe you just didn't study right. Maybe you didn't study the right thing. And we tried everything, honest to goodness. And then she worked with a not a psychologist, a mindset coach. And we beat test anxiety to the point that she scored on the top of her NCLEX to get in to become an RN. Here's a kid who could not do anything when it came to testing, and I had given up all hope. I had hired her the best of the best, but it wasn't that she couldn't take the test. It's just her brain froze when she sat down in that pressure. And as soon as we were able to help her get through that, she became an amazing test taker. So now I tell students and families alike, there's always opportunity, and my first 2 proved it. My second 2 had the benefit of my first 2, and that is why Joe is on this call. I want you all to have the benefit of Joe because my kids didn't. And so he's going to be sharing in just a minute. But before he does, I really want to show you the timeline. Everybody wants the timeline. And I think it's important that, I share that because hopefully it will help some of you, the win. So as I pull this up, I want you to be thinking about your child or the one who's leading, the firstborn. I call it the guinea pig. And I want you to think of that student. At College Ready, we use a custom created program, and I'm going to briefly show you so I can show you the timeline. This right here is our student portal. Everything inside here is my 17 years of intellectual property. And so it's an amazing place. We can show you the exact GPA and the exact test score, who got into every school last year. But I'm going to go into the testing section so you can actually see straight what my students see. So if we go into standardized testing inside the portal, you will see lots of opportunity pop up. And then I'm going to share with you the timeline. Joe, can you see my timeline?
Yes, I can.
Outstanding. So here is the timeline I've created for our average students, because we can only speak to that when we're speaking to the population. The best time to start preparing to take the test is when your student has taken the right subjects. That's the only way I can start that starting point. I have some students who start their freshman year in Algebra 2. If you wait until their junior year, they're going to have to reteach themselves all of the basic stuff on these tests. It's not a good plan to wait.
Shelly, sorry, Shelly, can you zoom in a little bit for us?
Yeah, for sure. No problem. Is that better?
It's a little bit better, I think. Yeah. Okay.
To go bigger? Is that good?
That's good. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
All right, it's a little small on my screen.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to share, especially on a cell phone, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So really important. We have our students take the PSAT their freshman year. That's like riding a bike with training wheels. Their sophomore year, that's like taking the training wheels off. The junior year is the first time it really matters. And we want them to be jumping off curbs. That's how I explain it to students. Practice makes perfect. If they're taking the PSAT, the money round, the round that really matters for their very first test, they're going to be a little freaked out. So we want students to understand and families to understand You can't wait on this. We start students in our program as young as 8th grade. I even have 3 7th graders because they're exceptionally mature. We're not grinding on this stuff. We're letting them know opportunities are there and this is what they want to prepare for. So this is how we do the timeline as a rising senior with no prep. And then here's it broken down by 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And so we're happy to share these resources with you, and I'll be putting a link in. And we will also be taking question and answer at the end of our time together. So we can talk about SAT exam, we can talk about comparing them, we can talk about looking at both of them together and knowing which is your best test. We can talk about preparing for the PSAT. I mean, we have this down to the science of it all. And we want families to know testing is the fastest way to a scholarship. Testing is the fastest way to a scholarship. AP testing, Joe's gonna, I don't want to steal his thunder, is the fastest way to college credit or not having to pay that money when you get to college. He'll dive into that in a bit. So why do students tell parents, but no, mom, dad, testing is optional? Because I've never met a child who wants to test prep. Have you, Joe?
No,
No,
not necessarily.
no. And so why would they tell us that they need to do something they don't want to do? It's not going to happen. It's being on these webinars and having this information that's going to allow you to make wise decisions for your family. When you look at institutional money, you only can apply to some schools if you have a test score. It's called test required. Kids don't tell you about those schools. They want to say, but at the UC schools, guess what? It's blind. Well, let me ask you this question. How blind is it if a student writes how hard they work to get a perfect 36 on their ACT? Can you unread that? No. Is that fair? All I can tell you is if I was a student who got a 36 on my ACT, I would be saying that I spent hours and really worked hard to get that score. That is a true fact. They're not making it up. But what does that do for the student who submits no score? I don't know. We're all humans, and you have to absorb that in the way you want to absorb it. Our job tonight is to let you know what you don't know. And that is the beauty of why we do these calls. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe at this point. We will then wrap it up with some Q&A and answer all of your questions. So Joe, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with our families.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you for having me back. I think the first time I came on, we did a recorded podcast, I think almost a year ago. The group was very small at that time. So really, really happy to be back. I see some of my fellow group members are on this call. So allow me to introduce them to you. Again, my name is Joe Sebestyen. I'm really excited to be here. And I'm going to share a little bit here about myself, just to kind of break it in. But, you know, my background has been in the public education field. I've taught in charter. I've taught in private. I've been a social studies teacher. I'm always a social studies teacher at heart. I'm currently an assistant principal to administrator, actually now longer than I have been a teacher. And my Facebook group, you know, I'm going to share here right now, is called Athletes in AP History. And before anyone, you know, asks like why athletes or what, so it is kind of our niche in terms of who we target. But honestly, we accept all. We have a lot of non-athletes or students who are in the bands and arts and stuff. And the idea of it is that you don't have to spend a ton of time, because athletes don't have a ton of time. They're involved in heavy extracurricular activities, or other students who are memorizing anything for your AP exams, because the AP history exams specifically are a skill-based exam. So, you know, I absolutely want to second what Shelley said, that Testing is not optional. It's a crazy time, and how fast information is changing. And unlike the SAT and the ACT, where you have multiple opportunities to kind of get it right, and I think Shelley does encourage multiple times taking the exam. Unfortunately, with APs, it's offered once a year in May. You don't get your scores back to July, so you really, really only have one chance to take it once, right? Um, and so tonight, I want to talk to you. We are going to kind of have the lens of AP, but really we're going to focus on AP history. And I'll explain that here in a minute, with earning this free college credit with AP history exams, because your students do have this opportunity to do so if they are. And so again, that is the free Facebook group. We formed about a little over a year ago, last September. We're now over 2,500 members and growing every day. So, one of the things at the end, I'll invite you to, it's completely free. We give information, we help student athletes, we help parents understand how to do this and how to help kids get ace these exams. That's really what our goal is. And so I learned a lot of this first by teaching, by being in I've had the privilege of being in several different school systems. I've had the privilege of being a tutor in person and on Zoom. And what I've seen is there are students out there, there are parents out there, like Shelley said, that value test prep. They're paying for test prep. And that was my first introduction to how do you do this, was developing test prep systems for another tutoring company and helping their students earn 4s and 5s. So my two goals tonight, and I don't know, Shelley, do you see the Q&A or is it only on my end?
No, I see it as well. I'm going to wait an answer at the end so
Yeah.
everybody can hear it.
Yeah, go ahead and load up the Q&A too. But I want to kind of share my two goals for tonight. I do have a nice slide deck. I'll try to be as brief as possible, but we want to learn how to leverage the AP history exam, because these AP exams can help your child earn college credit, guaranteed, potentially saving both time and money. And we can get students there. And then I also recommend with Shelley, she'll show you exactly how to do it, what colleges take it. We have a little bit of that in our program. And then how to do it is we were going to talk a little bit about the strategies for success. So let's talk about the leverage your student potentially has, and then we'll talk about the strategy. So those are the two tonight. So why AP history? Usually it's the first opportunity for your son or daughter to take an AP class in high school. It's usually social studies. So to answer one of those questions, we do offer support for human geography and for government, but most of the time it's AP World History, sometimes AP US History, 9th and 10th grade. It's their first ever exposure to AP courses. I know it was mine, and I just know the schools that I've taught in, usually it's one of the first opportunities kids get to take an AP exam is AP history. In fact, AP US, AP World, and even AP Government, but let's just focus on AP US and AP World. They are the most popular courses, along with AP English Language and AP English Literature. So more students take these 4 exams, these 4 courses, than anything else, right? And so, let's face it, if your son or daughter is an AP student, they are a high achieving student. They're there for a reason, right? They got good grades, they were recommended, they did honors programs. They excel. They have succeeded throughout their high school or middle school career, and so that's why they're there. So all the AP students are mostly high achieving students that are there. Okay, and they have a golden opportunity to earn free college credit, literally, because this is a nationally standardized test across the nation, offered at the same time on the same date. And it's one of those only standardized benchmarks outside of the SAT and ACT that colleges have to see what are kids made of. And so we all know this. Shelley can definitely speak to it more than me. College tuition costs only go higher, they don't go down, right? And they outpace inflation year after year. And just the insane amount of money the cost of a college degree is right now, which we usually say the average cost of 3 college credits, which is typical. Now, some schools, it's 4 credits per class, is around $4,000. That's the average, right? Sometimes it's lower for states, sometimes it's higher for private, but it's only going up. And if you want to do the research, don't have to take my word for it. College Board offers a free tool called AP Credit Policy Search. If you type that into the Google machine, and search the AP course that your son or daughter is taking. You can then find the college. And most of the time, this is pretty good. They keep this information pretty up to date outside of like the Ivy League, because the Ivy League doesn't like to advertise it. But you can see what credits they'll get for that course. So there is literally a tool out there that you have to actually see what I'm talking about today in terms of what direct credit. Now, I might get some blowback. This is from 2022, so this is not the current college football rankings. This was last year with my nice graphic. So we don't have the final college rankings this year. But I did this to show a point, just because it's not just Ivy League. If you looked at the top 4 schools that made it last year, we just looked at AP US history. Georgia, Michigan, TCU, they all accept a minimum of a score of a 4, with Ohio State accepting a 3. I'm not going to badmouth Ohio State's low academic standards. I'm just joking. but they accept 4s and 3s. A lot of schools accept 5s, but the 4 is like that universal credit, right? You need to get credits, and just look at the difference. Georgia earns you 3 college credits. Michigan gives you 3. TCU gives you 6, and Ohio State gives you 6. So why is that? Well, when your son or daughter goes to college, they have to take the money-making courses, the big seminar, auditorium style courses. And oftentimes those are your history courses. Those are your English courses, just basically high school 2.0. And they're just taking the same old course again as like prerequisites to get into major. We have worked with a lot of families who came from international education systems. America has a very robust way of doing college. You do not go directly into your major. You have to kind of get into your major with taking some of these prereqs. And so they are just basically the credits you're already taking in high school. So that's why they reward this. So for Ohio State, for example, US history is a course that is often split into 2, pre and post Civil War. And so they're you're testing out of 2 courses here. So that's pretty powerful. Same with TCU. So, and I use this graphic kind of when I started out, in terms of $50,000 saved at Harvard. Shelley mentioned Harvard for free. Harvard and a lot of the Ivy League schools do not let you send single AP scores. Harvard has a minimum of 4. You have to score 4 5. So take 4 AP courses, score 5s on 4 of them, and they'll actually give you 32 college credits, which is the equivalent of almost $50,000, right? So you could take 4 social studies credits and get $50,000 in Harvard. Literally the curriculum, human geography, world history, US history, government, get 5s on all of them, $50,000 at Harvard and more. And I'm going to show you some exemplar students later who actually did this. So that sounds great. What's the bad news? Unfortunately, there's over 1.2 million students that'll take an AP history exam this year. 1.2 million students. Very, very popular. That's the 3 world, Euro, and US. 50% of these students will fail the exam, meaning not get a 4 or 5, not even get a 3. A 3 is passing. And if you look at the niche rankings, if you look at the US News, best news, best school, they're measured on students getting 3s, not 4s and 5s. Remember, 4 is that universal threshold to get college credit. And so to make matters worse, only 10% of that population is going to score 5s and 15% score 4. So we're looking only at a quarter of students are going to earn that guaranteed college credit in most schools, right? So that's a very, very small number. Statistically and historically, the 5 social studies classes that we actually teach and prep for are some of the top 10 hardest classes to pass, hardest exams to pass historically. In fact, last year, this is directly from the scorings distribution from 2023, physics was the hardest test to pass with 3 at 45%, followed by United States history at 48%, government at 49%, human geography at 54%. So this has stayed pretty historically true, that these exams are some of the hardest to pass. Now you may be saying, but my student has an A in the class. What does that mean? I'm sorry to break it to you. I have been a history teacher and now I evaluate teachers for a living. Your grade in an AP class has no correlation to your exam score. Why? Because the teachers create the grades. They don't necessarily align it directly with the course, right? So it's a standardized test. They have to put grades in the grade book. So the grade can give you a false sense of confidence going into it. I've worked with students each and every year that come to me immediately after they get their score back that are going into another AP class saying, I had an A in the class and I did not pass the exam. I got a 1 or 2 on the exam. I don't understand how. It happens every year. So what can you do with those scores? What can they do with those scores? So I want to share a couple of my personal experience. This is going all the way back from my teaching career now. Nebula is probably one of my finest examples of how much leverage you can actually have as an advanced level student, right? This is her in 11th grade, or actually it's just 12th grade, but I had her when she was in 11th grade. She took multiple advanced courses, not just history, heavily involved in extracurriculars. So those that say that you don't have time to get these scores, that's baloney. You can, right? She earned 30 credits to Columbia. She went in as a sophomore. When she went in as a sophomore, she actually got to take a gap year. So she didn't just go in as a sophomore. She literally took her freshman year and traveled. She went back to her home country of Afghanistan. She taught English there. She saved $65,000 in tuition, all with just advanced exams. Natasha, she's a journalist in Syracuse right now, earned direct college credit to that university as well. The skills we taught her, though, helped her still today, because we teach the literacy skills, and we'll get to that in a moment, with her journalist career. Last year, some successes. We had 2 soccer players from California out Shelley's way, wanting both to go to UCLA. With their scores, they're able to have, they got 8 credits at UCLA. Both. Very generous with the UC system there. Other students of mine earned college credit with their AP US and AP World exam. We had student athletes get college credit, volleyball players, traveling hockey players. And this one I'm pretty proud of. This was traveling hockey players that I personally privately tutored back-to-back years, scored 5s in AP Government, scored 5s in AP World. Awesome students to work. They were great students to work with, straight A students. They just, like Shelly said, wanted to be absolutely sure that they're going to get the credits. They wanted that coaching, that value, that feedback. And then not just AP history, but we've had successes in AP government. We got 5s last year. We went 3 for 3 with our AP human geography students. So the strategies do work. So obviously this question is yes, right? Who wants their AP student to walk into college with 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, or even 30 credits? Shelly does, obviously, right? Just how much leverage would you have there? And so when we talk about, we bring the student athlete into it, if many of our students want to play at the next level, the difference, I've played football at the next level. The difference between being in a sport and not being a sport in college is when you're not in a sport, when you're just a college student, you have a lot of time to manage. When you are taking a sport, right, or you're in the band, your time is managed. Like you have very little time. So you can actually buy back your time. You could potentially work on your craft if you really want to get to the next level and want to put that extra time in, or just have like that mindset, that mental health break as well, because college is a lot. It is a lot right off the bat. So you got to be ready. So that's the first thing. Is I hope that was clear on how much leverage you have with these AP exams, specifically AP history. So now how do we get those scores? Because obviously you said 50% fail. So we're going to talk a little bit about the strategies for success and what we view as why our students get consistently the 4s and 5s. So why do so many students fail would be this guiding question. There are really 3 main reasons. The first one, well, hold on one second. Apparently my slides didn't copy over, but I'll talk about the first one for a minute. The first one is writing. And I don't know why my slides are not here. I'm sorry. They were here earlier. So the first one is writing. I can actually pull up a different show. So the AP history exams are heavily leveraged to writing. 60% of the exam comes from writing. So even your multiple choice questions, the stuff that students spend so much time on and so much stress on, the content is only 40% of the score. 60% come from 3 different types of essays. and that's writing. Let me switch over to this presentation here. I reorganized for Shelly and I lost the slides they didn't save. I apologize.
It's all right. You keep going, and I'm going to answer a few questions.
Yeah, go
I think
ahead.
now is a nice break. Let me know when you're back up, Joe,
Yeah.
and we'll jump back in. First question I have is, am I correct in seeing that you recommend students take SATs 3 times? No, not every student should take them 3 times. If a student did not prep and they took it without prepping and they were shocked at their first score, they should not stop there. If they took it a second time and kind of prepped, they need to take it one more time, but do not take it more than 3 times is really the key there. So that's important. You ready, Joe?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Right. We'll pick it back up. It's
There we
okay.
go. The whims of teaching sometimes. So number one, here's the writing. So here's how the AP history exam is broken down. The 3 histories are exactly the same. You have 55 questions in 55 minutes worth 40% of your exam. 3 short answer questions, 40 minutes you get for those, worth 20%. A document-based question, the DBQ, worth 25%. And a long essay question worth 15%. That's how the breakdown is on College Board. And so, Eve, this is our AP score calculator that we have. I do this to show a point that even if your student got all the questions right on the MCQs, they would not pass the exam just because of how it's weighted. You literally need to have writing to help you pass, let alone get a 4 or 5. With 60% of the exam score comes from writing, the main issue I see is teachers don't spend enough time teaching writing. Why? They're history teachers. They worry about their content. They worry about getting through their content. They worry about covering their content. I love history teachers. I am one of them. I'm actually going to Nashville tomorrow to be at the National Conference for Social Studies. But God bless them. They love their content. But the test measures writing. They measure skills. So usually they fall into these categories. They don't know how to teach writing. We're not English teachers. They don't know how to evaluate writing. They don't have time to teach writing. They don't have time to teach or to grade the writing. And they also, biggest mistake I see at very high affluent areas, they assume you already know how to write. But if we don't teach it, students won't do it. And I learned that lesson being an IB history teacher where the entire exam is writing. So we do solve this with some specific strategies that we teach in our program. And we do have frameworks, and I'll get to that here in a second. So back to reason number 2, content misalignment. So then the reason number 1 is writing. Reason number 2 is, the content, we cover content, but the test, the multiple choice, is historical thinking skills. It's not when was the Declaration of Independence signed. It's literally the artist's perspective on the subject of the painting was most likely influenced by which of the following. Your son or daughter might spend 5 hours in AP history and not be able to answer that question reviewing for this particular topic. Ain't that a bummer? Because in the end, it's a thinking skill, and we have to make sure we're practicing the thinking skill. So what are you practicing, right? And so look at this graph. This is from Bloom's taxonomy. Every educator or anyone that's ever been through a teaching program has probably seen this pyramid before. The AP history exam has moved to the higher order thinking skills of analyzing, evaluating, even creating with your essays. So if you're not spending time analyzing, evaluating, what are you doing in class? Most students are remembering and understanding. They're covering, or my teacher told me this. They're covering content. They're not actually doing anything with content. So there is a misalignment. And I bring this up because I've actually been through a doctoral program now for educational leadership. I've been through principal induction program. And this was from one of these big research projects that has been updated, but this study went all the way back to 2006. Harvard and Virginia University did a joint study to look at the AP programs. Now, I'm going to tell you this with a caveat that the AP programs have significantly revised multiple times since this study because of this study. And they found originally that if you took AP history way back when, like 20 years ago, AP courses do not significantly contribute to success in college. The why is because the teachers only focused on memorization of facts. You're not going to do that in college, right? And the exam asks you to analyze, evaluate, apply. The big disconnection I saw here is most AP history teachers fall into two categories. They're brand new, they have no idea what they're doing, or they've been doing it forever and they haven't changed. The test has changed, the way we assess changes, so we have to change. So we, as a program, actually practice how the exam will be, kind of like for our athletes out there, practicing like you play. And the third biggest reason is time. There's time management, time implementation, and time stagnation. So are you actually learning how to manage your time? Are you being taught how to manage your time effectively? Or where are you spending the most time at? Are you just reading a very long textbook, or are you actually learning different approaches to reading, approaches to writing, approaches to note-taking? Time implementation. I hear this from my students currently in my program. My teacher assigned me a DBQ for the week, and I took it home and I did it. Can you look at it? Great. That's awesome. The DBQ, you have to write in 45 minutes. Okay. We have to practice like it's going to be. If we never, and this goes to the prep part, if we never actually practice the exam, part of reducing a student's anxiety is knowing what to expect. Having done it before, building the resiliency to overcome it is the most important thing. So if I can put a student on in that exam in May, having taken multiple full-length practice exams in the time limits, and they can get the score they want on our AP score calculator, what do they have to worry about? There is no anxiety. That's the whole goal. And that's what our end target is. And then time stagnation. Again, back to the covering, there's 9 units in AP history, no matter it's world, US, or Euro. And so it is a fire hose of information. And so we don't spend the time teaching the skills. But the score is weighted differently, and the bulk of it comes in the middle units. So we need to know how to leverage the skills with the content to get, there's my writing skill, to get it. So that is part of what we do. Okay. And I'm going to break down here in a second for everyone. If you want to take another question, I'm just going to pull up the different. That's where it was. Went out of order.
All right. We're going to jump back into question number 2. Does the student need to take both the SAT and ACT? What are the benefits of taking both? The answer is no, they do not. It's kind of like I tell students, do you like Nikes or Adidas? It is a preference because you feel like one of them fits you better. And as simple as that analogy is, what we do is we have the student take an SAT diagnostic, an ACT diagnostic at-home exam, timed, compare the score, letting the student know that if they don't put in the effort at the test, they will have more test prep at the end. So they put in 110% effort. And then we look at the real numbers. So it's not a feeling, this feels better. It's no, you did better. And then we eliminate one, we find where the gap is, we figure out how much time it's going to take and the best way to prep and how the student learns, and we recommend a strategy. Joe, you ready?
Yep, sorry.
Okay.
The back and forth. So here's the final stretch. How do we solve this, right? So I'm actually going to give all your webinar registration people and your attendees here this guide. So don't worry if I go a little bit quick here. I'm actually going to give you the free document. But here's the pillars we focus on in our different programs: framework, feedback, and time. This is how we solve it. The first is framework. And I actually have a list of questions you can ask your son or daughter, or even potentially ask the teacher about this. So, how are students being taught how to get those strategies, take notes effectively? How are students taught the thinking skills, the critical thinking skills? How are they taught to draw connections? And my guiding quote here is: telling is not teaching. My teacher told me does not mean anything. Are students actually practicing how to do it? Are they actually learning how to effectively and consistently answer the FRQs? The second pillar is feedback. So we teach the frameworks on how to attack the exam, how to hack it, basically how to leverage the time and avoid writer's block and make sure we have the skill sets necessary so we can be successful on the exam. The second pillar is feedback, which we call the compass of learning. How are students given feedback? Writing is an iterative thing. It is an iterative process. You have to practice, but more importantly, you have to have a peer review. You have to have feedback. Getting that feedback is very necessary. I'm working with a couple students right now that told me that it's taken weeks for their teacher to give them their first DBQ back with feedback. It has to be timely, it has to be consistent, or else how are students going to improve? So that's one of the other aims of our program, is giving them that constant feedback so they know they are improving. And then finally, time. It's not the main thing, it's the only thing. Are students taught how to time management? Are they taught how to answer these questions in 1 minute each? Are they taught how to think in the time limits? Are they taught how to answer these FRQ questions? How to avoid writer's block? How to not waste the time? How to hack the exam? And that's another pillar that we focus on. So if you want your students to help, if we want our students to help ace the exam, first thing, I invite you all to join our free Facebook group. It's easy to find. You just type in athletes in AP history and submit a join request. I have that free resource I just went over. It's in a document form, and I can drop that. Would it be best to drop it in the chat, Shelly, or you want to send it out via email? What do you think?
Let's do it in an email.
Okay, we can say I'll send it to you after the webinar here. And so I have this whole document broken down that we have, and I also have an invitation for your audience to book a free call, an AP action call. We have a ton of free resources and free trainings. We do weekly live streams on our Facebook group. And so I have a team that helps. This is your special link, Shelly, because it says Shelly Howard sent me. So you can book a time. It says a quick call with our team just to see what's going on, see if we can even help you. But we like to pair all of our group members and anyone that's interested in working with us up with free training or free resources. We have writing guides galore. I have a bunch of frameworks on how to answer any of the FRQ questions. And we can have a whole list of resources, but we can tailor it to what your needs are on that free call. So I invite you all to potentially book that free call. I can drop the link in the chat if that's something that's interesting, but that's what I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Outstanding. So we have quite a few questions, and we have about 10 more minutes. So let's go ahead and go through them. If you have a question that you would like answered on this call, please drop it in Q&A. Don't put it in chat. We're going to go through the Q&A. If you're like, wait, mine's way specific to my child, I don't want to get into the weeds. You were just gifted a complimentary call. Same with College Ready. We give you a complimentary call for being on this this wonderful learning opportunity. And so just know there's different ways you can connect. All right, jumping in. My son is taking AP Spanish. Is this for kids who are only taking history AP? You want to go ahead and...
Yeah, well, my primary focus is AP. I have a great AP Spanish tutor. We're in the process of building out a similar framework and structure, and we're trying to expand, but we primarily focus on AP history and government and human geography in the group. But if you need support, we do. My parent company, I guess, my primary company is called Supported Tutoring. So I'm connected with a lot of other tutors. If you need one, you definitely can jump on a call. We can pair you with a really good tutor.
Perfect. And it still does apply, parents. You can use that 4 or 5 on your AP Spanish exam to get the same leverage for return on investment. So I just wanted to put that in there.
Absolutely.
Next question. Hi, Shelly and Joe. Can you tell me what resources do you recommend for the SAT preparation, please? My daughter's in 8th grade. You want me to take that one?
Yeah, is that the what's the SAT? Yeah, the essay. Oh, is that just double S? Okay.
I think I think it was a little typo, but I grabbed it. So the number one thing I will tell you before your child starts high school is teach them to love to read. I know that's like, what? That's not prep. No, honestly, did you hear Joe saying you need to write? You don't write well if you don't like to read. It does, the two do not correlate. And so I tell parents, I've talked to people when they've just become pregnant and say, Shelly, how do I get my read, love to read? It doesn't matter if it's a novel, fiction, nonfiction, whatever that may be. Get them learning different types of genre, which will give them a diverse vocabulary, which will help them on the PSAT, the SAT, and the ACT. After that, I would be very careful not to start too rigorously preparing until they've taken the subject matter. If they start preparing before they've had been taught, they think they're stupid. And I don't say that lightly, they really do. And it's only because they haven't been taught. Go ahead, Joe.
Can I add, I would say, yes, reading is very, very important, but nonfiction. Because we all love fiction and fiction can be great, but complex reading, complex thought, and the development of literacy-based skills comes from nonfiction. And and so I obviously pick an interest topic, but I'll go a step further, Shelley. Warren Buffett read every book in the Omaha Library about finance by the time he was 8 years old, just to show you the power of reading. Like the rich, the wealthy, the CEOs, the billionaires, they all have something in common. They read a lot. So, and then also some of the real famous entrepreneurs will tell you none of them spend time reading the whole book cover to cover. They skim. They learn this. The reading approaches of skimming is very important as well. So that's an excellent point, though.
I love it. So that's very important. So at that age, until they've taken the content, really help them to, I call it free writing, when they can take what they've read and just journal it. So they start that process of absorbing and then letting it go. Those gentle skills is what got my son through Harvard with 1B. He tells me all the time, Mom, thank you so much for teaching me to love to read. So that's straight from a Harvard grad. Is there a difference between credits a student gets from AP classes versus dual enrollment? I'm going to let you take this one.
That's a great question, because I get a lot of people comment on our front-facing Facebook page, not the group, about my son. Take dual enrollment, take dual enrollment. So first off, dual enrollment's not offered in every subject in every comparable AP class across the country. It has to be offered. Second, you got to figure out where the dual enrollment's coming from. So the dual enrollment, it's nice because you don't have to take the AP exam to get the credit. You just have to pass the class, pass the final, and you get college credits. But wherever that dual enrollment's coming from, I'm in Pittsburgh, so we work with a bunch of universities, the University of Pittsburgh, Duquesne, RMU, a couple other schools that that provide dual enrollment courses, and they give credit. But if it's a community college dual enrollment, Harvard's not going to take that. You have to make sure that, one, if you're going to that college, great. But if your son or daughter is potentially going to another school, you have to make sure that that credit's transferable. Just because you have college credits at a dual enrollment course in a school does not mean the school that your son or daughter wants to go to is going to take it or it's going to be transferable. So it could be potentially waste. So that's one of the big differences in terms of that, but it is still college credit.
I teach a whole course on that dual enrollment piece. So way to sum it up really quick, Joe. You nailed it. Okay. Let's see the next one. Is the 60% that come from writing related to the AP exam or taking the class during the year?
Very good question. The 60% comes from the AP exam. My thing is, teachers don't spend 60% of the time teaching the writing. 60% of the evaluation, the score, comes from writing, though, on the AP exam.
Love it. If a student scores a 1510 on SAT the first time, does she need to take it again if applying to competitive colleges, or is the score good enough? That is such a great way to sum it up. This is important, really important. If they just have a high GPA and a test score, it's not good enough, because you're competing with students who are going to have a better than. So do you want to go in and compete being good enough at a school that is competing at the very top level? If you have extracurriculars, leadership, passion with purpose, service hours, if you have letters of recommendation, if you can write a killer essay, that's an awesome score. But it's not just a test score. that is going to get you in. So it's not about good enough. It's about the entire standout strategy. And that is what we help families understand. But gone are the day when Joe and I, applied to 2 schools, had a nice GPA and a nice test score, and they're like, yeah, welcome. Now it's so much more than that. And so that's a great question. Can you please explain why a student shouldn't take more than 3 SATs? Oh, I would love to. Great question. Think about it this way. You have a dartboard and there's a bullseye, and a student just stands back and starts throwing darts. And then oh my gosh, they hit it. How much weight is going to be given to that? Well, we took it a whole bunch of times and the student finally hit it. I tell families, based on what our strategist has taught me, is that you should not take an SAT or an ACT until you hit the practice score of the real score you want. Because if you think you're going to score better than you did on a practice, it's probably not realistic. Joe, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely, 100%.
So we want to be strategic. There's a strategy to it. It's kind of like if you were at work, right? And you turn in a paper and you got it back. You turn in a paper, you got it back. That boss is not going to be very happy with you if that's the game that you want to play. You're much better off sitting down and getting it very well written, turned in, and pleasing them so you get the big raise. That's how we look at it. All right. I'm talking about the SSAT secondary school. Oh, okay. Application test, not the SAT or the PSAT yet. Got you. I love having families that are looking at this way when I did. Not too many people start this back in the middle school area. I actually started in 5th grade. So when you said the SSAT, let me go back to your original question. Here it is. Can you tell me what resources do you recommend for the SSAT preparation? So the best resources are going to come from your teachers, because they know at the level in which your child is. We don't want to give them a bunch of busy work if they're well above that. Remember, not every student's at the same level. So what I would give a student struggling with 8th grade would be very different than if I would give a student who is excelling. Anything you want to add, Joe?
No, I'm not as familiar with that. But yeah, I would probably recommend what you're saying. I mean, I'm not as versed in that as you, Shelley. So I agree.
Okay, awesome.
I probably have
Schools
time for
see
one more.
all, oh, that's right. We have a hard stop.
Yeah.
Schools see all SATs taken or just what students send. Ooh, this is a good one. I can't answer this in 1 minute. Can you, Joe?
No, I can't.
This is truly a discovery call question, because it has to do with the entire student's package and how you want them to go to that school. So thank you, families. Thank you, Joe. So grateful.
That there's a comment on the calendar link. Go ahead and save that link. If you don't, our team gets pretty busy with calls. So we operate on a 7-day rolling basis. So tomorrow more spots will open up the next day or whatever. So I see a couple people already booked calls with our team. Thank you very much. And if you want to save that link, and I'll shoot all those resources over to Shelley. So I'll get you I have a free writing guide for your audience as well for us. So I'll get that to you after our call. Thank you.
As always, we're about giving families, we empower you to know what you don't know so you can make the right choices for your family. So thank you, Joe. Thank you,
Thank you,
families.
Shelley. Appreciate
Have
it.
a wonderful evening. Bye
All right,
for
have a good
now.
one. Take care.